I clearly need a sign on my fridge that says you don't need it. I recently spent about 20 minutes watching YouTube videos from people living in tiny vans and tiny homes. The most striking, though, these people didn't have much in terms of possessions, yet they seemed genuinely content. All of their homes varied in size, some bigger, some smaller, but the common theme was clear. They didn't need much to be happy. They found joy in the simplicity. And that got me thinking about my own life. I live in what people would call a decent sized house, and yet I wonder, do I need all the stuff I have? Do I even use most of it? Like most people, my closets are full of clothes, my kitchen cabinets packed with plates, gadgets, and dining sets. But when you really sit down and think about it, do we need all of this? Maybe the secret isn't in accumulating things, but in learning to be content with what we already have. It's not the things that bring us joy, but living. It's about experiences, visiting new places, watching a breathtaking sunset, making friends, or enjoying a great game of pickleball. None of that involves being holed up in a house surrounded by material possessions. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with loving your things. Some people find joy in a perfectly styled home, in having endless choices of clothes and shoes, but for others, it just doesn't hit the same. I remember making a video not too long ago about how the ultra-rich live in mega mansions, and some so large that they have certain rooms that they haven't even visited for years. They own multiple homes, more than they could ever live in all at once. And it really makes you question, is all that space and all those things truly necessary? Meanwhile, there's a housing crisis with some people forced to live in vans, not by choice, and yet many of those same people are content, while some of us with so much more are still left feeling unsatisfied. And it reminded me of a quote from the ancient philosopher Epicurus. Not what we have, but what we enjoy constitutes our abundance. I mean, it's certainly not about giving up all your luxuries, but about appreciating that there are people out there living happy with much less. I recently came across an interview with the founder of Telegram, and he shared something profound.
Real estate, jets, or yachts, I don't think this lifestyle is for me. So I know that if I buy a house, I buy a jet, something like that, I would be spending time on trying to make it nice, and this will require a lot of time and effort.
So as you see there, he shared something very profound. He owns no property and no physical assets. And in his own words, there's nothing really, and I'm paraphrasing, they can't take anything from me because I don't own anything. That really struck me because it really gets to the heart of something many of us are trying to avoid, being owned by our stuff. I mean, just think about it. We come into this world owning nothing, and when we leave, we take nothing with us. At birth, we are small and vulnerable, and if we live to become elderly, we often revert back to the same helpless state. Even those in power, like President Joe Biden, will one day pass and own and have nothing. What's the lesson here? It's simple. Live each day like it could be your last. If you didn't wake up tomorrow, none of your stuff would matter anyway. And so why not live like the people in tiny homes? They don't bring anything into their lives that doesn't serve a purpose or bring them joy. Maybe there's a powerful lesson in that simplicity. As for the data, recent trends show that tiny home living and living in vans have gained popularity. And this is true mainly for the US and Europe. In 2022, the tiny home market was valued at over $16 billion and is expected to grow 3.5% through 2025. So what that shows is people are increasingly opting for smaller living spaces due to financial reasons, environmental consciousness, and the desire for a simpler lifestyle. Many who live in tiny homes report increased happiness and lower stress due to reduced financial burdens and the freedom that comes from having fewer possessions. I did link where I got this information below. But when considering whether people living in vans or tiny homes are genuinely happy, or if it's simply a lifestyle choice driven by necessity, the reality is nuanced. While many advocates of tiny homes or van life movement express deep contentment in their minimalistic lifestyle, the choice is often influenced by rising living costs and economic pressures. The cost of housing in many parts of the world has soared to levels that make traditional home ownership unattainable for a growing number of people, particularly millennials and younger generations. A significant portion of people living in tiny homes or vans do so out of the desire to escape financial burdens like mortgages, utility costs, and high rent. In fact, affordability is one of the primary reasons this movement has gained traction. However, this doesn't mean everyone would choose to live in such a compact space if financial circumstances were different. But this doesn't necessarily mean that people find this an ideal or sustainable long term. I asked myself whether I would give up my home to live in a van, and the answer would probably be no. Like many others, I value having a designated space of my own. Like, for instance, where would I put my Christmas tree when, I'm not using it? I would then, who knows, this would definitely not fit in a van or a tiny home. My daughter, who's now out on her own and has her own apartment, wouldn't have been able to have a room like this that she could destroy. For me, I personally value having a designated space to call my own, a place to spread out, create privacy, and divide different areas for specific tasks, such as a home office, a guest room, or even a workshop. These luxuries are difficult to replicate in a tiny home or van, where space is limited. Now, for families, the need for personal space becomes even more pronounced. It's hard to imagine raising children or cohabitating with a spouse in such close quarters without feeling the need to step outside just to get some breathing room. For single individuals or couples without children, the trade-off of tiny living can seem more manageable. With lower expenses for utilities, property taxes, and home maintenance, some might prefer the lifestyle because it reduces financial stress. And there are clear benefits in terms of lower environmental impact and minimalism. But the question of happiness is deeply personal. It's essential to ask those living in the tiny homes or vans how they feel after extended periods, rather than relying solely on the curated, sometimes idealized portrayals seen in social media platforms. I see so many people touting that they're extremely happy with their van life. Ultimately, while the tiny home lifestyle can provide freedom from financial relief for some, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Whether or not it brings joy or happiness depends on the individual's needs, personality, and life stage. This woman, perhaps, she says she's 41 years old, single without kids, would not require such a big space. But for those of you who prefer more space and privacy, traditional homes might always feel more fulfilling. But overall, this whole story that I'm bringing to you is that what I've learned is that maybe when you're looking at your life, look at the stage of where you are in your life and what you need and what you want. If somebody had offered or told me I could do this, 90s, 2000s, everybody's ideal dream was to, get a college degree, graduate, have a fulfilling job, own a home. And nowadays, we just don't see that happening. We see more people turning to this and saying, there's no possible way I'm even going to plan to have a family because it doesn't make financial sense. I'm just not making enough money. And to be quite honest, I want to see the world. I want to escape. And this offers that for a lot of people. I did show this in the background. This is from this website. These are the places where they're saying the top 10 states where tiny homes are the most popular according to whatever reports. There's a lot to do, sightseeing and hiking and things like that. Oregon is really beautiful. However, I just feel like I'd love to know what my viewers think about this trend. I believe personally that the elite and the power structures that are put in place want you to own nothing and be happy. For me personally, this sounds like a great option, putting a tiny house in your backyard as a side hustle. I would definitely contemplate. Have a great day.
And as always, remember to think for yourself.